Hey YouTube, how's it going? Dustin Smith here with A2K, Allegiance to the King, and today we're going to be encouraging you from the scriptures from Luke chapter 6, and we're going to be talking about the lordship of Jesus. Specifically today, I want to ask the question, what does it mean when we confess Jesus as Lord? Is it just that the words Lord come out of our mouth? Or does it mean that we are confessing to live under Jesus' lordship as our Lord, and we are his servants and his followers in obedience, faithfulness, and loyalty, okay? I think it's the latter, and I think that Jesus taught this, okay? And this is super important. There's a lot of confusion in the Christian world today. A lot of people like to think that all we need to do is just confess Jesus as Lord, pray a sinner's prayer, and then we're automatically guaranteed to enter into the kingdom when Jesus comes back, okay? Jesus teaches something different. Jesus teaches that the confession of lordship means that we are going to obey him as our Lord, okay? Let's look at what Jesus says on this matter in Luke chapter 6 in verse 46 and following. Luke 6:46, a very, very powerful passage to where Jesus says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?" That's what he's saying there. He says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, but you're not going to obey me? You're not going to do what I tell you to do. That's the whole point, is the confession that someone is your Lord means that you're going to obey them. It means that you're going to do what they say. And Jesus here mocks the fact that people not just would confess him as Lord one time, but would confess him as Lord two times, okay? Remember, in the biblical culture, to repeat something means that you're doing it for emphasis. I mean, you're saying that Jesus, he is my Lord, he is my Lord. And just that confession alone, if we are not going to do what he says, if we're not going to submit to that lordship, if we are not going to obey Jesus' words and commands, then that confession of lordship is pointless. It's pointless. And Jesus goes on and explains what he means by this. What does it mean that the confession of Jesus' lordship is pointless without doing what he says? He goes on and Jesus teaches here, okay? Now again, if Jesus is your Lord, then we need to listen very carefully to what he says, because he just criticized people for confessing him as Lord and not doing what he says. So let's listen to what he says. Very next verse, Luke 6:47, everyone who comes to me and hears my words and acts on them, I will show him what he is like. He's like a man building a house who dug deep, laid a foundation on the rock, and when the flood occurred, the torrent burst against that house and could not shake it because it had been well built, okay? So how do we build a house that is well built, that is going to stand up against the torrent in this particular parable? We hear Jesus' words after coming to him, and we act on them, okay? So we got 3 points to that step. We come to Jesus, we listen to his words, and we act on them, okay? That's the act of obeying Jesus' lordship. We come to Jesus as our Lord. We listen to his words as our Lord, and we act on them by being obedient and subservient to the lordship of Jesus, okay? So the key thing there is the response of acting on those words, of obeying those words, and doing what Jesus says, okay? But of course, Jesus, as a good teacher, is going to teach the opposite side of the coin. Verse 49, but the one who has heard and has not acted accordingly is like a man who built a house on the ground without any foundation, and the torrent burst against it, and immediately it collapsed, and the ruin of that house was great. The ruin of that house was great, okay? Both men built a house, okay? But one of them stood, and the other one didn't. And the reason why the first one stood is because it acted on the words that Jesus said. The second one here is the one that heard, okay? They heard Jesus, okay? They hear what Jesus is saying, but they did not act accordingly. They did not respond with obedience, with loyalty, and with faithfulness, okay? So the whole point here is that if we are going to confess Jesus as Lord, if we are going to confess the lordship of Jesus, that means that we are going to obey what he says. We are going to submit ourselves to that lordship, okay? So what does that mean in regard to the importance of the teachings of Jesus that we see in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, and the teachings of Jesus that Jesus has invested in the writers of the New Testament? That means that those words are extremely important, They are so important, okay? You cannot be a Christian that confesses Jesus Lord if you're not going to be obedient to the things that Jesus says. If you claim to be that type of person, if you're just going to say some sort of magic words, Jesus is Lord, and hope that that is just going to get you into the kingdom, Jesus says that's wrong. That's building a house without the foundation, and it's not going to last. Great, it's going to be a fall, and it's going to collapse. Okay? I encourage you, I urge you, I beseech you, if you're going to confess Jesus Lord, understand the commitment that you are making. Confessing Jesus your Lord means that you are submitting yourself to that lordship and you're going to obey what Jesus says. And that means you've got to read and learn and memorize and put into practice the words of Jesus our Lord. Okay? Hopefully this has encouraged you in your understanding of what the lordship of Jesus means in the life of Christians. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos from Allegiance to the King. My name is Dustin Smith. I'm with A2K. Until next time, you take care.